position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last left. Melanie Light by the first time. They're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely. Roger Lockwood and Hoyt.
From Archibald, Hardy Eustace defends his title, but Archibald is flat out in second. Then he's followed down right by, he's beginning to come. He's drifting off the true line. He's fire, and this must be home. Springs the gun. Gonna win his fourth Betfair Chase, and Cordo Star is still the king. Cordo Star wins.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tailed Off, episode number 18. This is a no-holds-barred podcast that dives headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of horse racing. Today we've got a very special episode and we're doing things a bit differently. We're joined by a very special guest, someone who's just started his horse training career last year in Newmarket. He's here to take us through what it's really like to be a horse trainer, and he's moving up in the ranks with quite a few wins already. I think 11 wins. Is that right, Jack?
Yeah.
Welcome, Jack Morland, to the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks very much, Matt, Duncan and Elliot, for having me. Yeah, very delighted to be on.
We really appreciate your time, and we've navigated some technology issues to get here, so appreciate the perseverance.
It's been a week late, but nevertheless, we're still here.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. So, we'll go through a few questions, and we'll give the viewers and the listeners a bit of an insight into what it's like to be a trainer. So, yeah, again, appreciate you staying with us for a few minutes today. So, let me kick off, and then Duncan and Elle can jump into some questions. So, I guess let's start with, how did you get into horse racing? Talk us through your journey into the sport and what it's like to be a trainer so far.
So I got into horse racing primarily through my dad. He had shares in horses when I was growing up, and I remember he took me to the races when I was sort of about 14, 15, and I just thought the coolest sport in the world. I thought it was just fascinating how the whole operation ran and everything, and since then, it probably, like all of you guys, I got the bug, followed racing religiously, mainly flat racing, and just sort of worked my way up through there. Went to university for a little bit, and then came out and always followed racing, and decided about age 21 just to follow my passion and get a job in racing, basically.
Nice. So started reasonably young, which is nice.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
still figuring out the sport. I'm only in a couple of years, so it'd be interesting to get your insights.
I'd say trainers aged 80 are still figuring out the sport.
Good, it's not just us then, that's good.
Yeah, the rabbit holes of the sport. Elle, do you want to start off with the first few questions then?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because obviously, Jack, I know we've spoke about it privately, but it'd be good to hear kind of on that journey, that foray into racing, where you kind of started, and then I know you've had different roles in different yards, even in different countries. It'd be good to just get some snippets from that little journey before you obviously took the step to be your own named trainer.
So I started off in racing working for a trainer called Brian Meehan. For those of you who don't know, Brian's a very, very successful trainer. I think he's trained 16 or 17 Group 1 winners, highlighted by a couple of Breeders' Cup winners as well. And I started with him about, I'd say, 9 years ago now. And when I started there, I was purely just a yardman. I used to muck out the boxes in the morning and put horses on the walker, go racing and lead up. And I worked myself up through the ranks there, and after sort of about 6 months ended up being his pupil assistant, which is sort of the right-hand man to the assistant trainer there, who at the time was a guy called James Ferguson, who trains in Newmarket now very successfully. And when you're a pupil assistant, you basically just get involved in every aspect there is of racing, whether it's mucking out in the mornings, putting horses on the walker, as I mentioned, doing treatments in the yard with the head lads, seeing horses onto the gallops, watching horses gallop, going racing, picking your trainer up from the races, driving your train to the races, you name it. There's all manner of jobs you have to do as a pupil assistant, and it was fantastic there as we had a good number of horses and I got fully involved, and I spent just over a year there. Then I moved to Australia, as a lot of successful young English trainers have done. Some have stayed out there. David Eustace, who now trains in Hong Kong, but George Bowie, Charlie Fellows, James Ferguson, to name a few, have all been out there. And I feel it's a great place to learn and make mistakes, and no one in England hears about them. So I went out there and I spent 2 years out there.
Safe space.
Safe space, 24 hours away on a plane. I spent time there with Kieran Maher and David Eustace, and my role there was something called a foreman role, where I was basically looking after a barn of 45 fillies. We had some amazing horses in the yard. We had multiple Group 1 winner, Loving Gabby, in there, to name one, and Kinedna, who's a 2-time Group 1 winner as well. And it's just really good to learn how they do it there differently and just how they train horses on a mass scale. Because when I left, I'd say Kieran have had upwards of 450 horses in training, which just is not numbers anyone even dreams of training in England. And it just taught me just a completely different training style and how sort of things are done on a mass level. I then came back and wanted to come to Newmarket, which is obviously the home of racing, and spent the last 5 years before starting training as Ed Dunlop's assistant trainer. I absolutely loved it there, and he got me involved in every aspect of training a racehorse and basically taught me how to train a racehorse and how there are different training styles, different training techniques, how you place horses, what you want to do with certain horses, and taught me the gallops inside out here. And yeah, after 5 years with him, I sort of thought I was coming up to my 30th birthday. I thought, well, my 29th birthday, I turned 30 this year, and I thought the time was right to sort of take the plunge.
It's amazing. Yeah, you're making me feel a bit old as well, Jack.
Sorry, you've got a lot more hair than me, mate, so I won't worry.
Jack, you're saying about when you moved to Australia, what is and obviously other trainers have done that. What is the big appeal for moving to Australia?
Racing in Australia is thriving. For those of you who watch it, the prize money is amazing.
Yeah.
There's lots of owners wanting to get involved in the sport, and I just think it's very good to learn how other different training techniques, how other people do it, and take snippets of bits and pieces from what they do and bring them back to the United Kingdom. Like the communication, which is one of my big things I try and do with my owners, is second to none in Australia, and I think we're only just getting to grips with what they do in Australia and England, and other things such as owners communication, just how they train horses on a mass level, and just the whole system is, I think, run very, very well. And I would tell anyone who's young, enthusiastic, and wanting to be a racehorse trainer to definitely spend time there. As it's a really good grounding place to learn and to experience something different, and also to make mistakes where it's not going to end the end of the day get back to you in England, and you can learn plenty out there without damaging your reputation, let's say.
Would you say there are many different training techniques from Australia to here in the UK? Or is it broadly the same?
I would say the techniques in Australia, they're trained very much on tracks, on race tracks. And they do long, steady canter exercise and short, fast pieces of work. Middle distance and staying horses will run over inadequate trips to start with to get themselves fit. I think they find it harder to get them fitter in Australia. Whereas in England, especially in Newmarket, it's all about Warren Hill and good canters up a sort of 4.5 furlong inclined polytrack canter, whereas there's very little hill work done with the horses in Australia. And you can see it in the sort of proof in the pudding that I personally think the Australians train their sprinters a lot better than we do over here. You only have to look at the horses they brought over. You can have to look at Asphora, Black Caviar, Choisir. They've all proven their worth over here and won our best races, whereas we take our middle distance horse over there and we win their best races. I think it's tit for tat, and I think it's working out what techniques you can use from Australia to benefit your training in Newmarket, and what you can use in Newmarket necessarily if you're an Australian trainer to benefit yourself in Australia.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had no idea. I had no idea Australia was the place to train. So yeah, go on, Dan.
Jack, you were saying the other part you mentioned in there is obviously that you can make mistakes over there and no one hears about it. What's your biggest kind of takeaway? Not necessarily a mistake, because obviously I don't want it to be called out as such and that, but what would you say your biggest takeaway was that you kind of the biggest lesson you've learned?
The biggest thing I learnt in Australia, I think, was just how to manage large numbers of horses in a very organised and manner. I think they had systems in place where it was completely idiot-proof and things just got done properly, and learning how to use those techniques and apply them. Well, I'm a small yard at the moment with only a small handful of horses, but when I get bigger, I would like to implement these management structure systems they had out there, which just allow things and allow you to do your job to the best of your abilities.
Yeah, I guess if the size of those stables are a lot bigger, then they need to be a lot more professional, organised type of structure, like say. So sort of
exactly. It's like running a multi-million-pound organisation. Well, it is a multi-million-pound organisation.
Yeah.
450 horses, that's got to be crazy.
That's quite the operation. All right then, so let's talk a little bit about how you set up your own stable then. So you've obviously come back, from Australia into Newmarket, which is a beautiful place, Newmarket. I've been there a few times. So how do you go about setting up your own stable? What's the approach? And also, I guess, why have you chosen Newmarket apart from being the home of of racing?
I think the main reason I chose Newmarket is you have access to the most amazing facilities in the world. And I just think I knew the facilities here. I knew how to train here. I think if I went somewhere else, I'd be spending the next 6 months working out how to train my horses. Whereas if I started in Newmarket, I knew how to do it from day one. It was a big pull for me. I also think owners like having their horses trained in Newmarket, or certainly a lot of them do. It's the home of racing. It's quite easily accessible. And the way you sort of go about it is there's a variety of modules you have to do. There's 3 modules at the racing school you have to do. You have to write a business plan, and you have to prove that you'll be able to get a number of horses in your stable. And then you've got to find a stable and find some horses.
So that's it. That's how you set up as like your own stable. You don't have to. I assume there's got to be some kind of training qualification or something you have to do in
So
order
there's
to.
few training qualification, like exams not exams, like modules at the racing school. You have to do an MVQ level 3 in thoroughbred horse care, and you have to write a business plan for the BHA.
You get sponsored to do that. Like, so for example, you worked for a Dunlop and people like that. Do they kind of sponsor you or anything like that to say, I've done X, Y, Z?
Yeah, well, you have written references I had a lot of written references from my boss saying that he knows how to do this, he knows how to do that, he knows how to do that. But yeah, there are a few funny ones. Like for the MVQ level 3, you had to show that you can clip a horse. So yeah, I had to get one of the girls in the yard to teach me pretty quickly how to clip a horse and to plait a horse and to pull a mane. I'm not saying it was the prettiestly clipped, plaited or pulled mane in the world, but it did get done, and I don't think it saw Newmarket Heath for a while anyway.
If you ever have a
That's
daughter, Jack, you'll be fine for that then.
Yeah, but no, yeah. So sort of, there's a whole system in the MVQ which makes sure that you have a good basic understanding of equine healthcare and basically how you'll look after and train your animals effectively.
That's so important as well. With everything that kind of goes on, you see in the media with the horse welfare and things like that. I guess
Exactly.
We've seen such a
something to cover
huge
ourselves.
focus now on it. Has there been even like a bigger focus on it in the last few years in terms of what you have to kind of really focus down on in terms of horse welfare?
Massively, yeah. I think massively it's all about making sure that we show the public that what we do at home and what we do for our animals is the care is second to none. And I think the more videos we put out about what we do at home and on the racetrack and everywhere, I think it's better. I think the more communication we give them, the better, and the less they can fire ammunition back at us.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like, there's so much misinformation out there, isn't there? And like you say, I think there's a responsibility, I think, of trainers, owners to share these, to educate, I guess, and share actually how these beautiful animals are actually treated and trained. So, yeah.
Exactly.
And then, Jack, obviously I had the pleasure of visiting what is now your former yard, part of Charlie McBride's sort of
Still my yard for one more day.
Was it okay?
Yeah, move tomorrow.
Time for a party tonight, Jack.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which was, I suppose, for you, just any place would do to start really. And you obviously started small. I think you said recently you had, was it 2 horses at the very start of your journey? How did you even acquire those 2, and how did you build from 2 to where you are now?
So when I left Ed's in July last year, I set out a big plan. And fundamentally, horse racing does not run without its owners, and you need owners. And the biggest thing I tried to target was to get as many owners in as possible. So I sat down with a book called the Thoroughbred Guide and found every owner breeder and owner under the planet's name and number and email address in it. And I wrote lots of letters. I called a lot of people I knew who I'd met over the years. And luckily, very fortunately, a lot of people supported me from the start. And I have to say a big thank you to Derek Lovett and Colin Bacon, who've been with me since day one, and Charlie Rosier as well, who've both been with me since day one. I've trained winners for both of them, and they've been very, very supportive and have got lots of horses with me now. And we've managed to, since then, once the winners started flowing, people we've approached previously have come to us, and some new people who I've never met before, such as you and Peter, have come to us, and we've managed to grow the team now, and we've got a really solid number of horses in our yard now.
Is the current number, Jack, you've got?
I think we'll have about 25 in the new yard when we move.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Nice.
Thank you.
Saffron House Stables is where you're moving to, which was it George Bowie had that previously when he started?
Yeah,
right?
it was with George. Yeah, it was George's previously. He trained out there for 5 years.
Yeah. So just talk us through what you think the differences are going to be, other than just size, from where you started to this next place.
I don't want to say anything bad about my old yard, but it was quite contained. There's a lot more space here now. I've got my own proper office now. You went to my old office, which was cupboard, like Harry
that an
Potter
office?
downstairs. But yeah, it did the job. I'm looking forward to being able to not have to sort of squeeze in and hold my breath when one of my team sits on the other desk opposite side, and have a bit more space to sort of. We've also got turn up paddocks, and the main thing the main reason why I took it is that although we've only got 25 boxes at the moment, there is access to 50. So we've got a lot of room to grow and develop into it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can get on and getting the boxes filled and training some more winners.
No, I think it's going to be brilliant. And I was just wondering, in terms of when trainers like yourself sort of move up into big yards, obviously you're not physically going that far, but is that unsettling at all for horses initially, or do they?
I think obviously it takes a bit of a bedding in period. The yard's very quiet. I think the horses will love it there. It proof's in the pudding. George Bowie's trained there. George Scott's trained there. Charlie Fellows has trained there. They've trained countless winners out of there. Classic winners, Group 1 winners, you name it. They've been trained from Saffron House Stables. There will be a period of bedding in, but I think it's mainly just making sure the routine stays the same and getting the horses happy and settled in, and hopefully then the winners will start to flourish.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well so far, that's for sure. So I'm pretty new to racing, Jack, so I don't know too much. I am, I guess, the racing idiot, you could say, on this podcast. So what is an average day like for a trainer then? Sort of like, what is your day to day, Monday to Friday, or I guess Monday to, there's no days off, I guess, as a trainer. So what's your typical week like?
So I normally get up. My alarm goes off at 4:45 in the morning. I get into the yard for about 5:15. The first job I will do, as we're still small, is I'll go around and feed all my horses, check they're all okay. I'll then go grab a coffee, go into the office, and I will, on Monday, go through all my entries and everything for the week and work out where I'm planning to run the horses. And then once I've done that, and I have a rough sort of guide about 3 weeks to a month in advance of where I want to run them, I will then go back and make sure that my exercise plan for the horses correlates to that and make sure I can get them into each race in peak physical fitness and condition. I'll then wait for the lads to come in, and I'll have done the lot board, and they'll come in and we'll ride 4 lots a day of 4 horses in each lot, or 4 or 5 horses in each lot, and they'll go out to Newmarket Heath and they'll do their various exercises, and depending on what I want them to do, they'll then come back in, they'll be checked over again, they'll be washed off, fed, and their beds would have been done. Then I'll go into the office and track the entries and the declarations to see what's entered in what races, what's declaring what races, whether I want to run still in certain places. And then we'll normally have finished riding them all out by about 12 o'clock. And then I'll go home, have some lunch, come back into the office and do a bit of paperwork. Being a small trainer, you're your own accountant as well, so have to do plenty of that as well.
I guess sort of one-man band, I guess. Yeah.
And I'll also then sort of coagulate all my owners' videos. I normally try and call all my owners at least once a week and send them a video update once a week. So I'll make sure I've done that, and I've got a schedule of that. And then the lads will come back into evening stables at 3:30. The horses will be fed again. They'll be skipped out. Any muck or pee or muck will be taken out the box. Their waters will be changed, and then they'll be fed an evening feed again at 5 o'clock. And then they'll be left to their own devices for the night, and then I'll go through the same routine again in the morning. Quite a repetitive routine. You'll build up horses' work, you'll build horses' work back down. Your horses will obviously get little niggles and injuries, and it's all about managing their programs and making sure that you sort of pick the right races for them and, do the best you can with them.
Interesting. This is like, if you look at like football, let's say, you're almost like the coach and the manager, and I guess in your case, the CFO and the operations director as well. So it's quite interesting.
I think the best way to describe it, like once you're bigger, is you're almost like a coach to a professional runner.
Yeah.
You decide their diet program, what their exercise is, and build them into certain big meets effectively.
Yeah, let's get into that a bit more then. So, did you have any specific sort of methods of training? You know, any sort of good system that you use? And then also on that, I guess I'm quite interested in like the sports science piece as well. Like they are athletes at the end of the day that you're training. So, like, how scientific do you get and look at the nutrition of the horse and all of that?
So, in terms of their routine, I've always been taught by every trainer I've worked for that horses like to be kept in a certain routine. They don't like their routine changing too much. Otherwise, it can stress them a bit and they can get quite anxious about it and they can go off their food. So I have a generalized routine which each horse follows, and that would involve primarily Warren Hill as their main canter exercise, but I would vary the amount they do depending on how light or how heavy I think they are. And they would do something called gallop work, which is fast work. Normally, once they've been in full canter exercise for about 3 weeks, I would normally start to gallop them. And depending on the animal, they can take anything from 2 pieces to 8 to 10 pieces till they're race fit and ready to run. Just depends on their shape, size, how much they try at home, and what trip they run over as well. For example, stayers often take a lot more getting fit than sprinters. And in terms of nutrition, I feed from a company called Spillers, and I'm very big into my nutrition. So horses which I think are running up a bit light and looking a bit ribby, they'll go on an ulcer supplement to make sure they haven't got any ulcers in their stomach. Moving a bit short in front or a bit scratchy and they're a bit sore, they'll go on bone supplements like humans do. So Calphos, which is calcium supplement. After any fast piece of work, they'll get fed electrolytes. They'll also be fed, if they've got bad feet and their feet aren't growing properly, they'll get fed biotin, which is a hoof growing supplement, promotes hoof growth. Plenty of oils given in their diet to add plenty of energy to it, and it's a very high protein mix and a pretty high oil content in the feed. And it's mainly, I like a feed which they digest properly, but I also don't like anything which bungs them up too much. So I like them to constantly be passing horses, because one of the most problematic, obviously, conditions in horses is colic. So I'd rather my horses to be too loose. They've almost got slightly, almost diarrhea-like poos, rather than being rock solid.
That's interesting. Guys, it's very, I mean, they're probably eating and looked after better than most humans, aren't they, really?
They're fed, my horses are fed 5 times a day. So they get lots of attention.
That's the dream.
Yeah, that is the dream, isn't it? Yeah.
I wish I could be fed 5 times a day and look like a racehorse, sadly.
Jack, one of the other things, like, obviously with everything you're doing, like, obviously day to day, week to week, how often do you actually get a chance to go to the races with some of the horses when they're entered and things like that?
Well, the main thing I always think is that in terms of an owner's experience, I think I try and get to the races as much as I can when my owners are there, because they obviously want to speak to the trainer themselves and know what the trainer's opinion is. But as I grow and get bigger, that will obviously become more difficult, because I'll have horses running at different tracks. I enjoy going racing a lot, but it does take a lot of time out of your day, and it does mean that you're spending a lot of time catching up when you get home. But no, I do try and go racing as much as possible, as I think that's what the owners, well, lots of my owners, they love going racing, and that's their biggest joy. Win, lose or draw, they have the day out with their horses, and I think it would be pretty poor for me if I didn't make the effort to try and go.
Yeah,
So interesting.
Although, having said that, Elliot, I did miss the last time call out one with Peter, but I did have a very good reason not to be there.
Well, you made it for our first trip to Windsor, which was, and you got us a box, so you can't say fairer than that.
Yeah, and I will be at Lingfield on Saturday for the midnight race, I call it. I think it's about 9:15 at night.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to still be up at that time, or if you might have fallen
I will
asleep.
be there. Don't worry, I will be there. There's not much going on at 9:15 that I can think of a good excuse for. Sadly, I'm joking.
Well, I thought you'd be in bed by then if you're getting up at 5:45, whatever it is.
We'll be there. We'll be cheering him home.
Hopefully for another win.
Oh, I think so. I should have a very good chance.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll have a little we'll dive a little bit into call out, I think, in a minute. I guess in terms of the regime then, do you do mainly flats? How does the regime sort of vary between the two?
Well, I think jump horses have to be a lot fitter. They have to do a lot more canter exercise, and they obviously gallop over further, and they get schooled regularly as well, just to teach them how to jump and keep them sharp and everything. But flat horses, I always think, are trained a lot fresher. They do less. They're less than jump horses, and it's all about keeping them sort of ticking over. Once they're fit, flat horses take very little. And once they're fit, I rarely do too much with them. I just keep them in a routine ticking over. But I wouldn't really know too much about how to train a jump horse. If it came to me, I would do my best with it. But no, I'm really sort of a flat man through and through.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of the flat horses, obviously you say they don't take as much work to keep fit. I imagine, therefore, that, and I've seen it even with call out, you can run more frequently. Is there a kind of optimum period between races for a horse, or does it just depend on the horse?
I think it completely depends on the horse. It depends on how they eat after they run is a massive factor what their constitution is like, how they move, and what type of animal they are. Like good horses, you obviously wouldn't run every week. Like the top level group performers, you'd map out good programs for them, and their race program fits into themselves because you've got all the big festivals and you target all the big festivals. Whereas if you're looking at a horse like Callout, who's a solid handicapper, he's a very sound horse. He eats very well. He comes out of his races very well. I think for the joy of everyone involved, what he can run plenty, and he obviously performs well when you run him plenty. And horses like that, they run themselves up the handicapper and they run themselves down the handicapper. They're never going to be, sadly, going to be superstars. You never know. But I think if you don't run them, you don't get what you basically pay for, and people want to go to the races.
It's good to hear.
And they don't make prize money sitting in their box.
Yeah, that is true.
Also true.
I was just wondering, before we hopefully talk a bit more about Callout, just in terms of whether it's your own training career or being part of Brian's or Ed's yards or even in Australia, have you got kind of a favourite horse, not necessarily the best horse you've been involved with, but one that for personal reasons just sticks out as sort of the most favoured you've been involved with?
There's been lots of favourites I've liked over the years. I would have to say in my yard, it would be Angel of Antrim. He was a real favourite of mine. He won 4 on the bounce for me, and he was a very kind horse. But my favourite horse I've ever dealt with was a horse called Dal Herald. He was formerly trained by William Haggis, and I looked after him in Australia. He was in my yard, and he was a lovely horse. He was finished second in a Group 2 called the Zipping Classic, and he was a proper sort of dour stayer by Champs-Élysées. And yeah, I just absolutely loved him, and he would probably be my favourite. But yeah, I've dealt with some lovely horses at Ed's as well. I had a real soft spot for a horse called Another Gift, who won 4 on the bounce for us, a Harry Angel, which I purchased for Ed in partnership with JD Moore at Doncaster. And yeah, obviously Angel of Antrim would be a real favourite of mine, but I've got some lovely 2-year-olds as well, which I like. But yeah, they often go in and out of favour when they're winning or not.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Obviously, one of the main points of this podcast, Jack, as we've kind of discussed, is to try and get people into horse racing and hopefully dispel some myths, unfortunately, that maybe the general population have about horse racing, and you've hopefully helped to explain the care and attention that the animals get every day. But I'd just be interested in your take on looking at the sport as a whole, as it sits today. What do we do well as a sport, and what are kind of things that you would change if you could be in charge for a day and wave a magic wand to help improve the sport's health overall?
I think what we do as well as a sport in general is that we're a big team. I think there's a lot of camaraderie within the sport. I think people look out for each other, and everyone's got each other's backs. I think would be a big sort of plus of our sport. You only need to look at some of the things which happens when, for example, when jockeys get injured, or obviously the travesty which happened with John Hunt, the commentator's wife and children, and just how the sport really rallies around people at their most dearest time of need. And I think that's a real plus of the sport. I think we're a real community, and we really, we stand by that. And when people are down in sort of the dumps and everything, we get behind everyone. I think we could have this podcast for hours if I could talk about what I thought was wrong with racing. But I think one of the main things which needs improving is the prize money for the owners. And I think the main thing we need to do is to have a fair and equal share of the media rights split out. That would be my main point before we try and delve into too much detail on everything else.
When you say fair split of media rights, what do you mean in terms of fair split?
Well, the
across
media rights
different...
is controlled and paid to the racecourses effectively. So
right, okay.
Yeah. So if it was distributed more fairly, there would be a lot more money going elsewhere in the sport to better places.
So do you not see a dime of the money then from the courses? So say, for example, at Lingfield on Saturday for Callout, you don't see a dime of, like, is it Racing TV or be Sky Racing that will
No, you wouldn't know.
You don't see a thing of that.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
That is very interesting.
Also shocking. Yeah.
Considering the amount
Jack,
of work
would you say would you see much?
Well, you would see some of it. Some of it is obviously the prize money is put on by the racecourse, and some of that money would come from the media rights. Yeah, but the share would not be proportionate to how it should be.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll go for it.
It's all right. No, it's a really good question. I think one of the biggest frustrations I have is that by and large the racecourses control the fixtures, and they're incentivized to have as many fixtures and as many races as possible. Stuff we've discussed on this podcast, which is not necessarily in the interests of the sport as a whole. It's for their own pockets. So I was just wondering, Jack, if you think, as it stands today, if there is too much racing. Obviously, it seems counterintuitive for you to agree to that because you want to have opportunities to win.
Listen, from my point of view, I don't mind having too much racing. It does for the good of the sport, it is not good for the sport. Although, if you look at flat racing, they do by and large fill their fields.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of split races, and you get 9 race cards at Lingfield, which have $2,500 to the winner, which, if you're travelling from Midland, Bailey pays your transport costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there has to be something done about it, and I think the fixture list. Listen, however you do the fixture list, there will be someone who will complain about the fixture list. But there are a few things I would change in the fixture list, but I think by and large, I think we need to increase the quality of racing we have in the United Kingdom. We have far too much bad racing.
I
interesting.
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's do the quick fire then. Just a couple of words each of the questions, and then we'll spend a bit of time on call out, and then we'll give you a break, Jack, and we'll hear from Duncan and Elle on this weekend's racing.
So the first one is best moment in racing so far.
Winning the Wokingham Stakes with Bacchus with Brian Meehan.
Fantastic. Toughest moment you've faced as a trainer.
Probably accidentally taking the wrong horse to the races at Newmarket for my first ever run-up.
Wow.
Superb. Love that
I mean,
one.
I can imagine that's easily done if they look quite similar. But
That would be one to forget. But luckily, we're a long way on from that now. But that was a pretty dark day.
It's a shame you weren't in Australia for that one. They wouldn't have heard it over here.
No, exactly. Should have made that mistake over there.
Perfect. Okay. Best piece of advice received about training.
Take every day as it comes.
Brilliant. Love that advice. And your favourite race course?
Oh, Newbury.
Oh, okay. And good course.
interesting.
Love that. Okay, there's your quick fire.
Lovely, thanks, Jack. So, should we talk a little bit around call out then? First of all, congratulations on the first win last week.
No, it was brilliant. No, I was over the moon for everyone. We've got a really nice bunch of people in it, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
You should have been sat next to Elliot in the car for that one. That was entertaining on the way through Italy. Just hearing him screaming in the seat next to me.
Paul Duncan was driving us to a wedding venue, and I'm also trying to navigate the journey, and I've got call-outs race on at the same time. I was thinking, I can't miss this.
Driving on the wrong side of the road as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Italians don't care though. It's just like I was trying to stare down at it and try and keep my eyes on the road, weaving all over the show. But it was they seemed very normal.
I think. Well, when I obviously got approached by Peter and Julian, who are obviously the 2 syndicate managers for the 2 halves of Call Out, we went to the Tattles online sale to find a fun horse who we thought would potentially not necessarily be well handicapped, but have potential for improvement. And we stumbled across obviously Call Out, which we bought off Ed Bethel, and I called Ed, who I know quite well, not very well, and asked him if it would suit the bill for a fun syndicate and a horse we could run plenty sort of over the summer, and he said yes. And I wouldn't lie, I didn't think he'd be winning on his 3rd start for us, but I've been over the moon with the way he's progressed. I thought he's ran 3 very solid races, and obviously culminating in a very impressive win at Brighton, and he's obviously in again on Lingfield on Saturday and Brighton on Monday. And as I spoke to the group, and I don't mind saying here as well, I think we'll probably go for Lingfield on Saturday, as I think it looks a weaker option, and it's obviously over our preferred trip as well.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to getting to see him again after missing out last time. So
for the course of the midnight race.
Yeah, it's too much drinking time before a race. That is. It's a bit of a
derby day as well, Elliot.
Yeah. I was just wondering on your thoughts, because it's on the turf, isn't it, at Lingfield? Because obviously they race a lot in the weather.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on? Because it's a bit of an idiosyncratic track. Obviously, it's a derby kind of trial track because of the camber and the turn. But what's your thoughts on running a horse over that turf track?
Well, so it's a straight 7.5.
Is it? Oh, okay. That's perfect.
Yeah, I think he'll suit it. So I think he's got a fair amount of speed. I think Brighton's a tight track and Lingfield's a pretty easy 7. The one thing is there's a bit of a draw bias at Lingfield. You want to be drawn on the stand side rail. It's often a bit of a golden highway up there. So hopefully we can get a draw there. The other thing he'll have to handle is the undulations. There's a fair amount of undulations at Lingfield. Not as bad as other tracks, but I don't see why. He's probably gone round one of the most idiosyncratic tracks in the country in Brighton, and he's handled it pretty well. So I'd say, hopefully, if all goes well, he should be handling Lingfield fine.
Lovely stuff.
That's right.
And a bit of juice in the ground now, hopefully, will help.
Yes, I think they're forecast up to 8 mil of rain tomorrow. So hopefully,
really?
I'd like just nice, good ground for him on Saturday.
Exciting. Well, we'll definitely be tuning in, or I guess you'll be there, Elle, won't you?
Yeah, I think I'll be there. Elliot, are you coming?
I'll be there, yeah, and these 2 boys might be joining as well.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, a good group then.
Be nice to see you again, Jack.
Yeah,
it'd be great. Awesome. All right, thanks, Jack. Before we head to the preview, give us a couple of horses that you're following that you caught your eye, caught your interest, that you're keeping an eye on over the next sort of coming months.
Is this in my string or in anyone's string?
I'd say
Anyone's.
yours. I'd say
One
yours.
of each.
No
Let's
pressure.
do one of each.
Yeah, let's go one of each. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, I've got a nice horse by Colsty. He's unnamed at the moment, out of a mare called Palace Future, who I think is a very nice animal. He'll be probably seen middle of July, 6-7 furlongs. I think he's a lovely horse, and he's unraced at the moment. One which has been made out onto the track already. There's a very exciting horse called Miss Your Chance, who won on debut at Redcar, who could be running at Royal Ascot. She ran a time of 57.13 into a headwind, which is a phenomenally fast time, and had to do all the dog work as well. So I think she's pretty smart. And then a horse I'd say to follow is a horse called Postmodern. I don't know if you watched it. It won at Yarmouth on debut for Wafnan Racing for the trainer Hamid Al Jahani. He walked across the line about 7 lengths clear of the rest and runs the Coventry Stakes at Royal Ascot, and I think it's a big bet.
Well, that's 3 for the trackers there.
In there. Fantastic. Thank you,
Amazing.
Jack.
Thanks so much, Jack, for your time and insight. It's actually really, really interesting. It's good to dive into a bit more detail and see what's behind the scenes of what it's like to be a trainer. So, again, really appreciate your time.
No worries. Cheers,
Right,
guys.
mate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Speak soon.
Jack. See you Saturday.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Bye.
Jack.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, boys. Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Sorry, I've had a couple of weeks off, but we've got to take some holidays, take some time off so we can bring some energy back to the pod. Let us know what you're liking about these podcasts. Drop us your questions, your comments. If you like it, just share. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So watch us on YouTube, listen on Apple, Spotify, and then message us on tailedoffpod@gmail.com. Keep up to date on our social media on Instagram, TikTok, and X. And until next time, have fun out there. Race smart, race hard, and try not to be tailed off. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Position. Any power at the last race down. Any power has gone, but in front of the last length, Melanie Light. The first time, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Lockwood.